The awakening of Sol 3. The discovery that changed everything. The Galactic Federation had rules. Thousands of them, written over millions of years by hundreds of species who had learned the hard way what happened when civilizations met without preparation. Rule 147 was simple: never contact a species before they achieved faster-than-light travel. Rule 148 was even simpler: never, under any circumstances, threaten a developing species with extinction. The Karthax swarm didn't care about rules. They appeared at the edge of the Sol system on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Their ships numbered in the thousands, dark metal constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They had consumed 17 civilizations in the past century, stripping worlds of resources and leaving nothing but empty husks floating in space. Earth was next on their menu. When the sky turned dark, Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her third coffee of the morning when every telescope on the planet started screaming. She worked at the International Space Monitoring Station in Geneva, a facility that most people didn't know existed. Her job was to watch for asteroids, track satellites, and occasionally spot comets. She was not prepared for an alien invasion fleet. "This isn't possible," she whispered, staring at the screens. Thousands of contacts, all moving in perfect formation toward Earth. Their trajectory was clear. Their intention was obvious. Within an hour, every government on Earth knew. Within 2 hours, panic had begun to spread. Within 3 hours, the Karthax sent their message. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a countdown. Species of Sol 3, the translation came through in every language simultaneously, broadcast on every frequency humanity used. You have 72 hours to evacuate your planet. After this time, resource extraction will begin. Resistance is futile. Compliance ensures survival for some of your population. The message ended. No room for questions. No opportunity for diplomacy. Humanity had 3 days to save itself. The secret humanity kept. What the Karthax didn't know, what no one in the galaxy knew, was that humanity had a secret. A secret so dangerous that Earth's governments had hidden it even from their own people. 30 years earlier, a probe had returned from the edges of the solar system with something impossible, a device of alien origin, damaged and deactivated, but intact enough to study. The world's best scientists had spent decades carefully examining it, learning from it, preparing for a day they hoped would never come. The device was a weapon. Not just any weapon, but something the probe's database called a stellar disruptor. The translated fragments suggested it had been built by an ancient civilization called the archetypes, beings who had vanished from the galaxy 3 million years ago. The scientists had done the unthinkable. They had built their own version. Project Midnight Sun sat in a bunker beneath the Australian outback, a weapon capable of triggering a controlled stellar flare that could sweep across the solar system like a wave of purifying fire. It would destroy the Karthax fleet completely. It would also sterilize half of Earth's surface. The choice no one wanted to make. President Katherine Morrison sat in the emergency bunker beneath Washington, D.C., surrounded by world leaders connected via secure channels. The room smelled of stale air and fear. "We can't use it," the Chinese premier said, his face gray on the screen. 8 billion people live on this planet. The stellar disruptor would kill half of them. "If we don't use it, the Karthax will kill all of them," the Indian Prime Minister countered. "They don't negotiate. We've intercepted their internal communications. They see us as insects." Morrison looked at the countdown timer on the wall. 67 hours remaining. "There has to be another way," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. General Marcus Webb, head of the newly formed Earth Defense Initiative, stood up. He was a tall man, scarred from conflicts most people had forgotten about. "There is another way. But it requires us to do something we've never done before as a species." Everyone turned to look at him. "We stop fighting each other," he said. "We pool every resource, every weapon, every soldier. We throw everything we have at them. Maybe we buy enough time to evacuate some of our population. Maybe we can bloody them enough that they decide Earth isn't worth the cost. They've destroyed 17 civilizations, someone objected. What makes you think we can do better? Webb smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because those 17 civilizations didn't have one thing we have. What's that? Spite. Humanity's last stand begins. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity that would have seemed impossible just days before. Every nation opened its military arsenals. Scientists shared research that had been classified for decades. Weapons manufacturers worked around the clock. The International Space Station became a command center coordinating defense efforts. They couldn't build spaceships to fight the Karthax, there wasn't time. But they could prepare Earth itself to be a fortress. Nuclear missiles were reprogrammed with new targeting systems. Orbital satellites were converted into kinetic bombardment platforms. Every major city installed emergency shields built from alien technology they'd been secretly studying. It wasn't much, but it was something. And then humanity did something the Karthax didn't expect. They sent a message back. Species of the Karthax swarm, the message began, broadcast on every frequency the aliens used. You have given us 72 hours to surrender our planet. We decline. Instead, we offer you 24 hours to leave our system. After this time, any ship remaining in Sol space will be considered hostile and destroyed. The response from the Karthax was immediate. Laughter. Actual laughter, transmitted across space. Amusing, their commander replied. Your weapons are primitive. Your technology is laughable. You have no space fleet. How do you propose to threaten us? The human response was 4 words. You'll find out soon. The Watchers take notice. What neither humanity nor the Karthax knew was that they were being watched. The Galactic Federation had been monitoring Earth for centuries, waiting for humans to develop faster-than-light travel so they could make first contact properly. They had ships stationed at the edge of the system, cloaked and observing. When the Karthax arrived, the Federation observers had faced a difficult decision. The rules said they couldn't interfere. The rules said developing species needed to be left alone. But the rules also said genocide was forbidden. Ambassador Velcor of the Zenithari Council watched the human broadcast with surprise. They had expected panic, surrender, perhaps desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, the humans had threatened their attackers. They're bluffing, his tactical officer said. Our scans show no hidden weapons, no secret fleet. Velcor wasn't so sure. He had studied human history, read their literature, analyzed their behavior patterns. Humans had a saying, cornered rats fight the hardest. Maintain position, he ordered. And prepare to intervene if necessary. These humans may surprise us. He had no idea how right he was. The countdown reaches 0. 24 hours passed. The Karthax fleet advanced toward Earth, their dark ships blotting out stars as they came. On the planet below, billions of people watched the sky and waited. General Webb stood in the command center, watching the tactical display. Every major military installation on Earth was connected to his network. Every weapon was armed. Every soldier was at their post. Sir, his communications officer said, the Karthax are entering weapons range. They're charging their planetary bombardment systems. Webb nodded slowly. He thought about his daughter, safe in a bunker in Colorado. He thought about the billions of other children on this planet who deserved a future. All stations, he said calmly, activate protocol midnight Sunday. Sir, someone objected, that will kill. I know exactly what it will do, Webb interrupted. But if we don't act now, everyone dies. At least this way, some of us survive. His finger moved toward the activation button. And then something impossible happened. The Karthax fleet stopped. Not slowed. Not paused. Stopped completely, as if they had hit an invisible wall in space. On every screen in the command center, a new message appeared. This one wasn't from the Karthax. Humanity of Sol 3, it began, this is Ambassador Velcor of the Galactic Federation. We apologize for not introducing ourselves sooner. We have been watching your species for some time, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Webb's hand froze above the button. Regulations normally prevent us from interfering with developing species. However, the Karthax swarm has violated several galactic laws by threatening your civilization. We have therefore taken the liberty of restraining them. On the tactical display, Webb watched as the massive alien fleet was slowly being pulled away from Earth by invisible forces. We have much to discuss, the message continued. But first, we must ask, were you truly prepared to sacrifice half your planet to destroy them? Webb looked at the stellar disruptor activation control, then at the faces of the people around him. Finally, he leaned toward the microphone. Yes, he said simply. We were. There was a long pause. Then Velcor's voice came back, and for the first time, there was emotion in it. Fascinating, the ambassador said. Absolutely fascinating. Humanity, you have just passed the most important test a species can face. We would very much like to meet you properly. The price of membership. The morning after the world changed. Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't slept in 48 hours. None of them had. The command center in Geneva hummed with exhausted energy as scientists, military personnel, and government officials tried to process what had happened. Earth had almost died. Then, impossibly, it had been saved by aliens no one knew existed. Now those same aliens wanted to talk. The Galactic Federation ships that uncloaked at the edge of the solar system were nothing like the Karthax vessels. Where the swarm's ships had been dark and menacing, these were elegant structures of light and metal, each one a masterpiece of engineering that made human technology look like Stone Age tools. Ambassador Velcor's ship was the largest, a crystalline construct that seemed to shift colors as it moved. When his hologram appeared in the command center, the room fell silent. He looked almost human, which Sarah later learned was deliberate. The hologram had been adjusted to make the conversation easier. His actual form was something her mind struggled to comprehend, a being of energy partially contained in a physical shell. President Morrison, Velcor said, inclining his head respectfully. General Webb. Dr. Chen. And representatives of Earth's many nations. I bring greetings from the Galactic Federation, an alliance of 847 species spanning 2,000 star systems. Morrison stepped forward. She had changed into a fresh suit, but her eyes still showed her exhaustion. Ambassador, we're grateful for your intervention. The Karthax are being dealt with, Velcor interrupted gently. Their fleet has been disabled. Their home systems are being quarantined. The Federation takes a very dim view of species that attempt genocide against developing civilizations. But you were just watching, Webb said, his voice hard. You knew they were coming and you did nothing until the last second. Velcor's expression didn't change, but Sarah thought she saw something like shame flicker across his features. You are correct, and that is something we must discuss. The Federation has many rules, General Webb. Perhaps too many. We are old, and we have become cautious. He gestured, and holographic images filled the air. Planets, civilizations, histories stretching back millions of years. We have seen species destroyed because we interfered too early, Velcor explained. We have watched civilizations collapse under the weight of knowledge they weren't ready to possess. Our rules about non-interference exist for good reasons. And yet you interfered yesterday, Morrison pointed out. Because you gave us no choice, Velcor said, and now he was smiling. Your threat to the Karthax was not a bluff, was it? We detected the stellar disruptor beneath your Australian continent. We saw your willingness to sacrifice half your world to save the other half. That changes everything. The test humanity didn't know it was taking. Sarah found herself speaking before she realized she had moved. What do you mean, it changes everything? Velcor turned to her, his ancient eyes studying her carefully. Dr. Chen, you helped develop the stellar disruptor based on archetype technology you discovered 30 years ago. Tell me, Did you ever wonder why that probe happened to find that particular piece of technology? Why it survived atmospheric re-entry? Why it remained intact enough to study? The room went very quiet. You planted it, Sarah whispered. It was a test. Not planted, Belcour corrected. But, guided. The probe was real. The architect device was real. We simply ensured your species found it. We wanted to see what you would do with knowledge of weapons beyond your current capabilities. Webb's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Morrison stopped him with a glance. You tested us by giving us a weapon that could destroy our own planet? We tested you by giving you a choice, Belcour replied calmly. Some species immediately weaponize such technology and turn it against their neighbors. Some destroy it out of fear. Some worship it as divine. You, humanity, did something unique. He pulled up files, decades of secret reports, research papers, ethical debates. Every document that Project Midnight Sun had generated. You studied it carefully. You debated its use. You developed strict protocols. You kept it secret, not to gain advantage, but to prevent panic. And when the moment came, when extinction faced you, you were willing to use it, but only as a last resort, and only against an external threat. Belcour's voice grew softer. 847 species in the Federation. Only 23 passed this test on their first attempt. You are the 24th. The offer and the warning. The next few hours were a whirlwind of information. Belcour and his team shared knowledge about the galaxy that made human scientists weep with joy and terror in equal measure. There were thousands of inhabited worlds. Millions of sentient species at various stages of development. Trade networks spanning the galaxy. Technologies that seemed like magic. Faster-than-light travel. Artificial gravity. Medical advances that could extend human lifespans by centuries. All of it could be humanity's. If they joined the Federation. But there are conditions, Belcour said, and the room's excitement dimmed. Membership in the Federation requires adherence to our laws. It requires opening your borders to trade and cultural exchange. It requires accepting that you are no longer alone, no longer the masters of your own fate. It requires giving up our sovereignty, Morrison said flatly. No, Belcour corrected. It requires sharing it. There is a difference. He brought up new images. Worlds that had refused to join the Federation. Some thrived, developing independently at their own pace. Others fell to threats like the Kaarthax. Still others destroyed themselves through war or environmental collapse. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Belcour said quietly. The Federation offers protection, but it also demands responsibility. You would have a voice in galactic affairs. You would have allies across the stars. But you would also be bound by decisions made by species you've never met, governed by laws written before your ancestors learned to walk upright. Webb crossed his arms. And if we refuse? If we say thanks for the help, but we'll take our chances alone? Then we leave, Belcour said simply. We'll establish a monitoring station at the edge of your system to warn you of potential threats, but we will not interfere further. You will be free to develop at your own pace, make your own mistakes, forge your own destiny. He paused. But you will be alone. And there are many threats in the galaxy far worse than the Kaarthax. The hidden truth about humanity. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She wandered the halls of the command center, eventually finding her way to an observation deck where she could see the stars. The Federation ships hung in space like jewels, beautiful and impossible. She wasn't alone. Belcour stood at the window, his hologram maintained even though no official meetings were scheduled. Can't sleep either? Sarah asked. I don't sleep as you do, Belcour replied. But I understand the impulse to stare at the cosmos when faced with impossible decisions. They stood in silence for a moment. Why did you really save us? Sarah finally asked. The rules, the test, all of that makes sense. But I saw your face when we activated the Stellar Disruptor Protocol. You were terrified we'd actually use it. Delcor turned to her, and for the first time, she saw his true form flicker through the hologram, something vast and ancient and strangely fragile. Because humanity scares us, he admitted. Not the way the Karthaks do, not through violence or aggression. You scare us because you're reckless. Because you don't know when to quit. Because you will burn yourselves to ashes if it means achieving your goals. He gestured at Earth. Your planet has nearly destroyed itself 6 times in the past century alone. Nuclear war, environmental collapse, pandemic diseases. Each time you pulled back from the brink at the last possible second. Each time you found a way to survive. And that's scary? Terrifying, Delcor said bluntly. Most species join the Federation because they need protection. They're cautious, careful, slow to act. Humanity would join the Federation and immediately start proposing changes, taking risks, pushing boundaries. He smiled sadly. The galaxy is old, Dr. Chen. The Federation is older still. We have become comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. We follow our rules, maintain our peace, and rarely take chances anymore. Then you appear, loud, chaotic, barely holding yourselves together, and in your darkest hour, you threaten to ignite your own sun rather than surrender. Sarah felt a chill. You think we'd disrupt the entire galaxy? I think you'd save it, Delcor said quietly. Or destroy it. Possibly both. That's why this decision cannot be made lightly. The vote that changed everything. 3 days later, every nation on Earth held simultaneous votes. Not just governments, actual populations. Using technology the Federation provided, every human being over the age of 13 cast their opinion. Should humanity join the Galactic Federation? The debate was fierce. Some argued for joining immediately, gaining access to advanced technology and protection. Others insisted on independence, wanting humanity to develop on its own terms. Still others proposed a middle path, limited cooperation without full membership. In the end, the vote was closer than anyone expected, 54% in favor of joining, 46% against. President Morrison stood before the cameras with Ambassador Velcor beside her. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we accept membership in the Galactic Federation. But we do so with conditions of our own. Velcor raised an eyebrow. Oh? Morrison smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. We'll follow your laws and respect your customs. We'll be good members of the galactic community. But if you ever plant another test in our path, if you ever manipulate us again, we'll withdraw and you'll have to deal with humanity developing weapons on its own. That would be unwise for everyone involved, Velcor noted. Exactly, Morrison said. So let's be honest with each other from now on. No more tests. No more guidance from the shadows. We're partners now, equal partners, or this doesn't work. For a long moment, Velcor said nothing. Then he began to laugh, a sound like crystal bells. 847 species in the Federation, he said. And you were already the most interesting. Very well, President Morrison. Equal partners. Though I suspect you'll find that position brings challenges you haven't anticipated. Epilogue, 5 years later. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of humanity's first faster-than-light starship. They were 3 light-years from Earth, on a diplomatic mission to the Zenithari homeworld. The past 5 years had been chaotic. Earth had opened to the galaxy, and the galaxy had come flooding in. Trade, technology, culture, it was overwhelming. There had been problems, conflicts, growing pains. But there had also been wonders. Humans worked on Federation research stations. Human art was exhibited on worlds hundreds of light-years away. Human cuisine had become surprisingly popular among species with compatible biology. And human stubbornness, that refusal to accept limits, had already pushed several Federation scientific projects forward by decades. General Webb, now Admiral Webb, commanded humanity's small but growing defense fleet. President Morrison had been elected to the Federation Council. The stellar disruptor had been dismantled, its technology shared with the Federation under strict conditions. And somewhere in the galaxy, the architects were stirring. Ancient beings thought long dead were beginning to return. The galaxy was about to face its greatest challenge in 3 million years. The Federation would need every ally it had, including the loud, chaotic species from Sol 3 who didn't know when to quit. Sarah smiled at her reflection in the window. Humanity had joined the galactic community. She suspected the galaxy would never be the same. And somehow, she thought that was exactly how it should be.